Pagani Design or Steeldive? Which one to choose? Let's find out. Hello, today I welcome you to my world of watches, and in this video I thought it would be interesting to compare two very well known homage brands against each other. Particularly we're going to compare the Tuna Homages. I've got a very good deal on this Pagani Design and thought it would be more interesting to compare it rather than review it. They both have amazing specifications for the money and also cost very similar. The Steeldive comes in at about $94 or 112 euros if you're from Europe, and the Pagani Design is about $90 or 107 euros. They both have Seiko movements, sapphire crystals, great water resistance, full stainless steel build, and overall they're very well made. So how do they compare? Well, let's take a look. So firstly, we will start from the packaging. Both of these watches came securely in their own type of packaging. The Pagani Design comes in this cardboard box. In my opinion, it has a little bit of a nicer presentation than the Steeldive, which comes in a plastic box, though I think that the Steeldive box is more like a case than a box, so it can actually get another life afterwards. For example, I oftentimes use this case when traveling. It has cushioning, so it is very secure, so from the packaging point, I would say I'll give it to Steeldive. Because of the design, both of the watches are narrowing up towards the top of the case, so the measurements actually change as you go. The Pagani Design is 47.5 millimeters in diameter, but it narrows up and comes to 40.5 millimeters at the bezel. The lug-to-lug size is very similar to the diameter and comes in at about 47 millimeters. Thickness is about 15 millimeters, the lug width is 22 millimeters, and it weighs 125 grams. Steeldive also shares very similar measurements. It is 47.5 millimeters in diameter and narrows up to 41 millimeters at the bezel. Thickness is 15 millimeters, the lug-to-lug size is almost 45 millimeters, the bandwidth is 22 millimeters, and it weighs 121 grams on the supplied silicone strap. So as you can see, the measurements are pretty much the same. The difference is a couple of millimeters, but they really don't differ. The weird thing is that the Steeldive for some reason looks visually smaller than the Pagani Design, even though they're practically the same size. Maybe it is because of the longer lug-to-lug distance of the Pagani Design, but again, that may be just for my eyes. Both of them wear comfortably on wrist. They don't put too much pressure on it, as with the silicone strap a lot of weight is reduced. Because of the thickness, they might get in the way of doing some of your daily activities, and it probably won't slide that easily under a cuff of your shirt. The good thing though is that when you accidentally hit a wall, you won't have to worry about the watch. Now you've got an angry wife and a messed up wall, so you have bigger things to worry about. Overall, I really don't feel very much difference in terms of wearing experience on both of these watches. Now, when you start talking about the bands of both of these timepieces, this is where a lot of differences show up and they strongly relate to wearing the watch. On the Pagani Design, the strap is way more comfortable, it is more flexible, a lot more smoother. I was really pleasantly surprised when I got this watch and when I felt the band, as I haven't experienced such a good stock silicone strap that comes on a watch. It just conforms so nicely to the wrist, it seems like it hugs it, and overall it is way more pleasant to put on. The band on the Steeldive is also not that bad, but it doesn't have the same characteristics as the Pagani Design does. I do have to give Steeldive its credit for making a way more interesting looking band than the Pagani Design. It adds a lot more character to the watch when designed this way, and it also has a big stainless steel clasp, which gives a better sense of security when handling the watch. I'm not saying that any of these clasps will fail, but I would trust the Steeldive clasp a little bit more. Now, this is where the things are actually really interesting. On the Casebacks, both of them are very nicely engraved, the Steeldive featuring its own logo with diamond fins, diver's glasses, and 2 oxygen tanks. Pagani Design on the other hand has a turtle for some reason, which I don't believe means anything, correct me if I'm wrong though. They also have the basic gibberish like the stainless steel, the water resistance and such. Both of them are screw-on casebacks. The interesting thing that I found, which I think correlates to the design of the caseback itself, is that when wearing or just holding the Pagani Design, you can really feel the movement and the vibration of the movement inside. It seems like the caseback is really thin, and so when there's a slight movement because of the rotor, you can really feel it. Now, this does not add or take away anything from the watch. It does not really interfere with the wearing experience, but it is just a weird feeling and I really want to express it. The Steeldive on the other hand does not have the same thing. Underneath both of the casebacks there's a Seiko NH35A automatic Hackett hand winding 41 hours of power reserve movement. Now, I do not have the professional tools to measure the accuracy of each watch, but I did get minus 14 seconds a day on the Steeldive and about plus 5 seconds a day on the Pagani Design. So in this case, the Pagani Design is a little bit more accurate. Now, speaking about the movement choice itself, it's really good. If you have been watching my channel channel for at least a little bit of time, you know that these Seiko movements are one of my favorites. They will serve you for a very long time, they hardly break, the maintenance is also very cheap when they go bad, and as you can see the accuracy is not that bad either, so overall I have to give both of them credit for choosing a correct movement. Now as I've said, the Casebacks are screw on, but both of these watches also have a screw down crown as well, giving them 300 meters of water resistance. Now this is quite impressive, though none of them are certified. For me personally, they seem to be built well enough to even go for a dive. I probably wouldn't do it though, but I think I would feel safe if I needed to. I have taken the Steeldive to the Mediterranean Sea, I went swimming, I jumped into water, and it survived just fine. I cannot say the same thing about the Pagani Design, as I haven't tested the water resistance, and I probably will not test it as the summer is quite far away. It would be really interesting to see if that extra 100 meters of water resistance is actually valid or not on these watches, because for some reason I have a suspicion that they could be just 200 meters of water resistance, but because the original Seiko Tuna, which these watches are homage to, has 300 meters of water resistance, they just put that on the dial. Maybe someday I will be able to try that out, but for now I'd say that it is very well done on the water resistance. Now the finishing on both of these watches is pretty much exactly the same. You've got brushing on the outer case, the lugs are polished, then the bezel is brushed, and the only difference that I see is that the rivets on the bezel on the Pagani Design are also brushed, while on the Steeldive they are polished. Both of them have a signed crown with their own logo, the finishes are again exactly the same. The differences to see when looking at this side of the watch is that one of the screws holding the bezel is in a different position, and also the crown on the Pagani Design is integrated a little bit better than it is on the Steeldive. It covers pretty much the whole cutout, while the Steeldive has a gap between the cover and the crown itself. And also this is where the Pagani Design is a little bit more original. The Steeldive has pretty much the exact same crown design as the Seiko Tuna, while the Pagani Design tried to do something different. As mentioned, both of these watches have 120 click unidirectional ceramic bezels. Again, in this place Pagani was a little bit more creative. As you can see, the bezel on the Pagani Design is a little bit more original, not exactly the same style as the Seiko Tuna. Steeldive didn't change anything, both of them are very well designed, they do serve their purpose fully, and both of them paid tribute to the original Tuna beautifully by not being aligned. They could have been a little bit more original and aligned the actual bezel. I do have to say that the action is a lot better on the Steeldive, there's practically no backplay. However, the Pagani Design has one of the most satisfying clicking sounds of the bezel that I've ever heard. It is just so crisp, it's a symphony to my ears, but it does have some backplay. Both of these watches use a sapphire crystal, and on both of them it is a little bit domed. I tested them with the diamond selector tool and it read positive. As always, if you want to check your crystals, you can find the link to the diamond selector tool in the description down below. Even though it is to be expected on these Chinese timepieces, the sapphire is always a very nice addition to the watch, adds to the longevity, and overall you feel more safer when wearing this watch because of the sapphire crystal. And now finally we come to the dials of these watches. One thing that I do want to say up front is that for some reason the Pagani Design dial seems to be very squished and smaller than the dial on the Steeldive. At first I hadn't noticed it, but when I got this watch my girlfriend told me that it seems like the watch face is a little bit too small for this kind of a vulgar, big, bulky design, and how I just cannot unsee it. On the Steeldive the dial seems to be a lot more open and easier to read. I do believe this effect appears because the Pagani Design has bigger, longer indices, and also the bezel is a little bit wider as well, so this is what gives it that smaller look. However, this is where again Pagani Design gave it a little bit more thought and went with a different design choice. Don't get me wrong, they didn't do much, they just put the same design indices as on the Seiko Samurai. They do somehow work with this design and I like how they look. On the Steeldive the indices are round and they are pretty basic, but they do work with the design as well. The hands on the Pagani Design I do believe they are taking from another design too, I just cannot find it, and on the Steeldive they are again really similar to the Seiko Tuna. Both of them don't fall out of the context and they do look really good. The finishing on the Pagani Design is polished and on the Steeldive it is a very hard brushing. On both of them there is a date window at 3 o'clock, again nothing really special, but both of them look really good, just that the Steeldive has a black outline and is a little bit bigger. I like that they didn't overdo the writings. On both of them the brand logo and name is on top, looks very lovely, and then on the bottom there are the 3 lines of text telling a little bit about the movement and the water resistance of the watch. Now I want to talk about the dials themselves. The Pagani Design has a beautiful sunburst blue dial which matches perfectly with the bezel, and it just works so well in the sunlight. The blue color is just constant, the shade doesn't really change, and it is very well done. Also, another thing that I was pleasantly surprised was to not find any dust on the dial. Now, I know that the colors of these watches do not match at all, but this is even better because you can take a look at different options, which will help you choose, in my opinion. The golden dial of the Steeldive is just something else. Even though I do have this watch for quite some time now, it still doesn't fail to impress me. It is just so beautiful and works so well in pretty much any lighting. It is just a burst of color, and any way you look at this watch, it will look beautiful. I do not want to say this, but I do think that out of my all collection, this watch has the most beautiful dial. I know it may not be for everyone and it is very bright, but that's the whole purpose of this watch, is to bring you happiness when you feel down, when the day is murky. At least for me, this watch just gives so much energy and brings a lot of color into the world. So to sum up this part, in my opinion, both of the dials are just beautiful and I really enjoy them both. If you like a little bit more of a low-key kind of style, definitely go with the blue Pagani design, and if you like colors, as the spring and summer is coming up, I will choose something from the Steeldive line, as they do not have only the golden color but also orange, light blue, red, green and also dark blue as well. Now, speaking about the Lume, we have a clear winner. Steeldive is very well known for their heavy use of BGW9 Lume in this budget watch game. It is just outstanding, very easy to read in the dark, it stays up for a very long time and it has that punch. In this part, Pagani Design cannot even compare. The Lume on the Pagani Design is way more subtle, doesn't stay that long and isn't that bright. And plus, with all of that, the bezel on the Pagani Design is not loomed as it is on the Steeldive. So if you prioritize Lume, I would definitely go with the Steeldive. Hands down one of the best looms that I've ever had, and it is just amazing for the price. So now my final thoughts about both of these watches. After doing this comparison, it was really interesting to go deeper inside the designs of both of these timepieces. Both of them have amazing specifications for the money, they look beautiful, they serve their purpose, and they are in a sense very similar. If I would have to choose between the two, it would really be hard, as both of these watches have their own quirks and design choices which I really like. As I've said, I'm more of a color guy, so I would choose the Steeldive, but I think that the Pagani Design is way better if you're looking for a more low-key kind of watch, everyday wear, and something that goes a lot more easier with an outfit. You don't really have to match anything when you choose a dark blue watch, while the Steeldive may fall out of the whole context of your chosen style. So all in all, they are both very good offerings if you're looking for a Tuna homage. So there you go, here's my full comparison of two great Tuna homages, the Pagani Design PD 1695 and also the Steeldive 1975. If you're looking for a diver with this kind of style, both of these offerings are very good in my opinion. They both have a very nice design, beautiful colors to choose from, and overall the build quality seems to be very good. So would I recommend it? I would definitely say 100% yes. If you have around $100 to spend on a dive style watch, these two are very good contestants, and as always the links will be in the description down below. And if you like this video, please leave a like and also consider subscribing and hitting that little bell so you'll get notified when I upload a new video. And now thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.